you. Thank you. Did you know that Harvard Medical School has said that your interactions with people, your relationships, your sociability, that all greatly impacts your length of life? Wow. Yeah. And in the medicine system that I studied, every kind of relationship, including your loved ones, the people you work with, and the seasons, your emotions, your any kind of trauma you've had, all of these things, even the elements from the tastes that you eat, your relationship with those actually really impacts your body's ability to heal itself. Bad news is that we all have traumas and situations that really impact us. And for me, one of the things that really first impacted me was, as a child, I thought everything was wonderful and fantastic. We would go to sleep at night, and my father had set up speakers in all of our rooms that would be wired up to an amplifier with a microphone. And he would introduce the next fairy tale that we would listen to as we would fall asleep. He'd turn on the fairy tale after introducing it, and all of us kids would fall asleep with the fairy tale. And then during the day, we would have classical music, dancing. He was a gymnast, so we all learned gymnastics, and we did circus acts together. It was really amazing. Sometimes we would listen to poetry. And then slowly, as I got older, things started to change. The fighting started between my mother and my father. Sometimes they would get really intense. And then the last fight, with the intense screaming and the crying of my mom, ended with like this intense silence where you could hear like a pin drop, where we watched my father hold my mother with a gun to her head. That was the last fight. And we then moved across the country and didn't see our father much for a few years. Interestingly, all of my brothers got into detective work. My younger brother was a police detective. My older brother became a private investigator like my father, who got the first license in Las Vegas. And my older half-brother, he became on to be like a world assessment expert, investigating the potential for violent crimes to occur. And so I thought I would do that too. And I spent about 6 years working for my father. And then I just knew that it really wasn't for me. And ever since I had been in kindergarten, I'd been looking at anatomy books and thinking that I'd wanted to be a doctor. So I decided to put my energy towards investigating medicine. And that's why I'm known as the Sherlock Holmes of medicine. Yeah. My grandfather actually was an actor and had played in many movies, and he was actually the informant for Sherlock Holmes in the original Sherlock Holmes. So that's where the name came from. Anyhow, I spent about 10 years in college studying music composition while I studied sound healing, biology while I studied biological medicine, and architecture design while I studied like harmonics with geometry and creating healing buildings, basically. And then I went on to study what's called biotrain assessment, where we take urine and saliva and we make many different measurements, and we look through microscopes. I studied live blood cell analysis, and this was all with the group that first brought live blood cell analysis to the United States. I was studying with international doctors from Italy and France and China, world experts in their systems, learning how to understand the body from a really specific chemistry, physiology, biological perspective. And then I got married, and my wife and I moved to Costa Rica for a short time. We had our first child there. Then we lived actually in Ecuador for 3 years, had our second child there. And then altogether we moved to New Zealand, lived there for a year, and then we lived in India for 3 years. And the whole time I would connect with different tribes, different indigenous people, investigating, like following clues for this case of life and death, of like trying to understand medicine and the body from these perspectives of indigenous people. One of the things that I noticed as I kind of later on got more advanced in my in my studies was that I would actually spend time with teachers and elders in these different systems. I got certified in Chinese acupuncture and Tibetan medicine and Ayurveda, and I would sit with these teachers and get to know them and their life and their stories. I'd watch them with their patients, and I'd see how it was not exactly as what the books said. The books were very two-dimensional compared to that. Their relationship with their patients, their relationships were very very personal. I worked with one of my teachers who was specialized in kind of what you'd call psychiatric medicine. And he would sometimes just say a few words to his patient, and most of the patient's physical ailments would go away. He would say things like, I bet you'd be a good, he'd say like, do you like agriculture? And the person would say like, yeah, I love agriculture. He goes, I bet you'd be an incredible farmer. And just that would completely shift the person's thing, and most of his symptoms would go away. So as I saw this over and over again, and I reviewed what I had learned, I realized that there was this huge factor that was missing in teaching indigenous medicine to people, like people learn Chinese medicine and other forms of traditional medicines. And so I wrote my first book, which was called The Principle of Harmony in Healing, Unity in the Mystery and History of Medicine, where I talked about the entire world culture and how the indigenous people had a very similar way of observing the world after empirical knowledge that was built over thousands of years. They saw the body kind of the same, life kind of the same, relationships, communities, it was all very, very similar. And that their medicine system that they had developed was also very similar. They had basically a way of saying hot disease, cold disease, and what we would call the wind, which is a huge relationship with relationships, with the movement and change of everything, with energy and like kind of the quantum, what we would call. I also had a background I also studied for a while quantum medicine, using frequencies and harmonics to change things. And what I found more and more is that in these indigenous systems, they had actually covered so many aspects of the newest discoveries that are now done in medicine. Like if you've ever heard of nanomedicine, nanomedicine was done more than 1,000 years ago with particles that are the same size, using the same substances to get the same things. And today, they're still used and with more effectiveness than what we do in modern hospitals. So all these issues that we have today, like diabetes, GERD or acid reflux, multiple sclerosis, pain, headaches, sleep issues, all of these things that we've spent trillions of dollars on trying to create pharmaceuticals to kind of experiment to find what's the component, how can we change it. These were all solved like more than 1,000 years ago and are still being solved using the same remedies that were developed more than 1,000 years ago. In modern medicine, we have about 7 to 10 medicines that have not changed over about 50 or 60 years. Everything else is consistently changed, replaced because of the side effects, because of unknowns, and because of how we think we might be able to influence it better. So what I would like to do is, during this time we're together, is share with you these basic principles that don't require even herbal medicines. They don't require therapies or pharmaceutical drugs or supplements. These are basic things that all the indigenous people around the world learned to impact our chemistry and move our systems towards wellness and balance. With that, any medicine you decide to use, whether it's supplements or herbs or therapies, will actually impact you many, many, many times more than if you don't know these things. And using simple things like eating butter when you need to go to sleep and staying away from liquid oils, or eating more liquid oils when you're tired and you don't have a lot of energy. These simple things can move so much oxygen and water in the body that the immune system actually helps to heal itself. So what I say is that I'm the Sherlock Holmes of medicine, and I help restore faith in your body's ability to heal itself. Yeah. Thank you.